Welcome back to Kiss and Tell Live Podcast. I'm Dr. Jenny, and with me tonight is our guest, Adrienne Brown. Adrienne is one of our wonderful KNT writers, and she has several great articles on the site. And she is also a therapist, a sex therapist, even better. Hi, Adrienne, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome. So, first, I must say thank you to everyone who sent me wishes on that I was okay after Adrian. I was in Sarasota, Florida, during Hurricane Ian. And so I wasn't able to be here last time. So thank you for everybody who checked in on me. I appreciate it. Okay, back to the podcast, back to Adrian. So, what do you find that you talk about the most when you're in your practice?
Oh, I think the most is sex drive, discrepancy in sex drive. Um, yes. Also, I think I do a lot of sex education too.
Okay.
I'm starting to get a lot of that. People are scheduling because I've come across, virgins and recently lost their virginity in their 20s and 30s. So that's been a thing, so just doing some sex education surrounding that. So that's been like the main two I've been getting a lot.
So tell us a little bit about that because, I've heard, of course, that people are losing their virginity later
Mhm.
than they used to be in your high school years typically, but now it's in your 20s. So can you say to the audience the reason you think that's happening?
I've seen a lot of it is just, beliefs, core
Mhm.
beliefs, just wanting to wait um till they get married. So I think a lot of what their parents instilled in them, the environment that they grew up in. Some people just wasn't really interested. They was focusing on getting out of high school, going to college, and just kind of doing their own thing. And so dating wasn't really a priority for
Mhm.
them. And so, just even in high school, being a high achiever, just doing different activities and different things like that. So not really leaving a lot of room opportunity to really go out there. And so once they recognize, okay, I've succeeded, I've met my goals career wise, now I want to date, and so now it's the anxiety of what do I do, how do I explore, how do I talk to people. So a lot of it is just trying to work through some guilt and shame
Mhm.
behind maybe waiting and, their upbringing as it relates to their religion and different things like that, parenting styles that could have contributed to them waiting. So it's a lot of that.
So even though you realize, that they're older than, they're in their 20s, but they're still having the same struggles
Yeah.
that somebody in their teens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you help them? Like what do you do?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, just goal setting, because everyone have a different goal set for themselves as it relates to just exploring their sexuality. Some people just want to go into how do I talk about it, or how do I explore it myself? Like, what are some things I can do to expose myself to it just to get comfortable with it, So it may be just different things in the media or reading some books or whatever the case may be. Do you have somebody that you feel close to talk about it? Most of the time they don't.
Mhm.
So we can start here in therapy.
Right.
So a lot of it from what I've experienced is a lot of the sex talk.
Mhm.
They don't know how to even approach it or what to do, and then also just how to get it started with just exploring themselves. And a lot of them have tried to, but it feels weird to them. It's foreign to them, and so they kind of stop. So they're trying to find a different way where they can explore themselves. What toys to buy to assist them with exploring. So I've had that as well. So,
what do you find is a common thing? Do they have more struggle with exploring their partner or exploring themselves?
Exploring themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, exploring themselves. Yeah. And some that have, they're in a relationship and the partner that they're with, that's their first partner, they have, an issue with that, And so sometimes I'm like, well, let's just start with you first, let's just kind of talk about that and explore that. So yeah, it's a mixture, but most of it is just exploring themselves, a lot of them are single.
Right.
So very few have partners. And so, and a lot of it with the couples, it's just they've come across some problems with talking about it or how they've explored or some pressures that's been put on them that kind of hinders them from really exploring with their partner too. And so they'll say, well, I don't really have a lot of experience, so I don't feel like they're being patient. So I kind of get a lot of that with the people that are in a relationship with a partner, and that's their only partner that they've ever, had. So,
And so how are they? Are they receptive to your suggestions, or are they still resistant? How does it?
They're receptive to it. It's just they're still kind of like still anxious about it, so sometimes we kind of go into just practicing like how to start a conversation with their partner. The ones that are in relationships, how to start a conversation about expressing concern because of the pressure that's been put there, and so it's just kind of going through that and how to have those conversations, not being judgmental, kind of using the correct words, different things like that. And so if there's certain things that they ask, well, I'm not really sure about this, about my needs, then we need to kind of backtrack,
Right.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So that may become a thing. It may be more common than we think.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that those studies saying it is more common. But the good news is there's people willing to talk about it more. So I think more so today than you would even say 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's another thing, too, just seeking the help. They recognize I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. I have this and I want to be free. I want to feel confident. And so they recognize they need help. And so they're seeking it instead of just trying to deal with it or avoid it, which lead up to other problems. So,
or denying it,
Exactly.
Right. Or my partner will figure it out for me.
That is common too. Very. Well, you should know. The partner and it's always one partner have a lot of experience, the other one don't. So they put a lot of pressure on the other partner too. Well, you should know this. You should know this. And it's because their partner is experienced and they're not. Well, how are they supposed to know if you're not talking about it? Well, they've had this many partners, and so they should know what a woman wants or what a man. I'm like, no. So that is very common too. So I've seen that where they're both putting pressure on each other.
Right. What are like some things that you say? Like, do you have 3 things that you always say, or 2 things, or what is it? Is it common?
How are they supposed to know? You say they should know. So how are they supposed to? And they're like, I don't know. So if you don't know, how are they supposed to know? And they were like, well, and the rationale behind this because their experience, they've been with other partners, but everybody's different. Like you may have different needs. You may have different places that you enjoy touch that the person they was with before didn't really enjoy that. So they may not have any experience in feet or whatever, So that's usually what I ask is, so how are they supposed to know? And a lot of times it's I don't know.
Or they're supposed to be psychic.
Yeah, mind readers.
Yeah, mind
But
readers.
then I kind of once I ask that question, I kind of go into talking about a little bit of CBT,
Yeah.
teaching them about cognitive distortions and how that can affect our behaviors and some of the decisions that we make, and also just how we see ourselves and our partner, and just kind of changing that mindset and just being more open about having the communication.
So, just for the audience, what's CBT? I know what it is, but what is that?
Cognitive behavior therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just focuses on like your process, your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors. And so I kind of help clients connect the dots as to, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and how it correlates to certain behaviors or their responses to their partner. And so I'll make that connection when they say, well, you're supposed to know, when they tell their partner that. And so now I'm going to challenge it. Well, how are they supposed to know? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's explore,
Right.
And so they can kind of understand where the distortion is, and so that it's really good to start there too, to kind of weed out some of the distorted thoughts, and how they're seeing their partner and how they're trying to engage in sexual activity or intimacy,
What are
and
what are some of the distorted thoughts that you've heard?
Oh, what if should and must is really like, I don't know. Like that is like common. I think I've seen across the board. There's the should. You should know this. You should know this, or you must do this. What if? What if? I've seen a what if in clients that have trauma, and so their partners may know about the trauma. Well, what if I hurt you? What if this? What if that? Or they're just thinking it in their head, and so their partner don't feel desired because the other partner's not really doing anything because they're thinking, well, what if I do this and I'm triggering them? So then they kind of avoid. So just kind of talking about those things, and identifying, well, that's a barrier to really exploring your intimacy, because you're telling yourself that if you try something, then they may respond in a way where they're triggered, or they may have a flashback or something, And so it's just, again, putting emphasis on having open communication.
Right.
That's important. Like if you're thinking it and you're thinking for your partner, you need to ask it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So you're saying, well, at least some of what I'm hearing you say is it's communication. It's learning how to communicate, your wants and needs, in the bedroom.
Exactly. And so just pointing out some of those areas, they're able to recognize, okay, the communication really is a major factor, because I can see how me processing this is really hindering from really growing with my partner and exploring with them, or just finding out like what they like, because they told me about their past. And so now I'm afraid I may do something, but you don't know. You need to ask, talk about it. You're just leaning on your own understanding. And then they feel like you don't like them. They don't feel desired. They don't feel wanted because you're not doing certain things.
Right.
Because of the what ifs. So that's just an example.
Yeah. So you're talking about somebody who's had past, sexual trauma, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're worried that they might cause a trigger and not be able to connect,
Yeah, like I've seen it where, they want to try something new, but they're afraid to ask because they're thinking about, well, my partner told me they experienced this when there was a child, And I don't want to ask because I don't want to trigger. And so they kind of go through this whole internal dialogue, and then it eventually results to them avoiding the conversation. And so then they just go on to the next. But that's what's hindering them from really having a discussion, determining like what you can do, what you can't do. And if you don't know how to go about doing it without just leaning on a what if, So that's how the cognitive distortions really kind of also contribute to a lot of barriers and issues in intimacy too, because people are in their mind all the time. So
but they're not focused on what they're feeling. They're too busy thinking.
Yeah, I'm like, well, how do you know what feels good? You're always in your head, and some people recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't really enjoy because I'm always thinking.
Right.
So usually that's indicative of, okay, well, y'all not talking then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You need to talk. So, and they're like, why? No, I'm just not comfortable with it. My parents never talked about it. So it just kind of snowballs into identifying other areas that need to be explored too.
What are some of the books that you recommend? Do you recommend them to read itself, or do you have exercises that they do, or like give examples?
I have some books. I don't even remember the name of it. But I do have one book for sexual trauma that I do recommend. I think it's called Sexual Healing or something like that. I can't remember because I haven't recommended it in a while.
Okay.
But yeah, I recommend that for sure. There's some other workbooks like maybe associated with CBT. You know, I may find different articles, online that I believe can be very helpful. As it relates to just communicating and, building trust or that emotional safety and security, so they can feel closer. But a lot of it, it's just kind of sporadic when I do recommend different books. I think there's another one for trauma called The Body Holds the Score or something like that. I've recommended that a couple times too.
Yeah.
I think it's a blue book. I can't remember, but yeah.
All right. I'll let you go. I won't hold you on the book.
Yeah.
I should prepare you for book recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your favorite part about doing your job, about helping people? What is it that brings you joy?
Just being on their journey of exploration. I really enjoy the sex education part I'm learning. I really enjoy helping people along their way, learning themselves and their sexuality and building confidence in that. And finding out what that is and what they like and what they want to try and how to go about doing that. Like, I really enjoyed it, even with individuals that, have confidence and just want to navigate, well, what do I do? Because I'm older now, so the sex education part is really interesting to me,
Yeah. For people who want to follow Adrienne, who is her Instagram handle? Is that what you say, handle?
Yes, Instagram handle A.M. Brown LPC.
Yeah, so you can follow her, and of course she also is a writer at KirstenTellMagazine.com, so you can read some of her past articles. They're all very good. Yes, I know I'm biased, but hey.
Hey,
That's okay.
some good reads in there.
Yeah. So tell me, share with us your story that you probably you couldn't believe they told that to you. Have you had any of those types of stories?
Well, somebody told me something.
Yeah, in a session. Obviously you gotta share names, but have you heard the story that you're like, whoa, I haven't heard that one before?
Oh, yes, I have. Yeah.
Something that not is bothering, but it's just you was just surprised because you haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so one that I haven't heard was related to sexual abuse, and they didn't know that it was happening for a long time.
Oh, they didn't know they were.
And they were an adult.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't heard that myself. Now that I think about it, so
Yeah.
they were being abused and they had no idea.
Yeah, up until maybe a couple years,
Into the relationship. or after
Mhm.
that?
It was after the abuse. I think so. Yeah, maybe about a couple years, but
Okay.
it was in their 30s.
Okay, so they were in session with you and they were just talking about their past. And when they did, you said something about being abused, and then that's when they learned?
Oh, no.
No,
So
no.
they learned before they saw me.
Oh,
But
okay.
when they said it, it was just, yeah, the sexual abuse ended 2 years ago. And I was like, 2 years ago, and they're in their 30s.
Right.
And so I just never heard that before. That
Okay.
was new for me.
So did they not know it was sexual abuse until after?
Yeah, to after.
Oh, okay. After it was the relationship had ended.
I think it was one of those situations which I'm not surprised where, individuals that live like isolated
Okay.
from the population.
Right, from the
So these
majority.
rural areas, like huge farms, land, no house next to them,
Right,
next several miles away,
right.
homeschooled,
Okay.
type of
Right.
situation,
Oh,
So I wasn't, so that kind of made sense, you
so
know.
that must have been double traumatic then,
Yeah.
actually, because they weren't thinking about it at the time. It was just happening, and then
Hmm.
they thought it was a part of being in that situation,
Exactly.
and then they learned it was abuse, and
Hmm.
they had to process it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
I found out about other details, it made sense why
Yeah.
they didn't know. So
Mhm.
it made sense to me. So I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's too bad. And you're right, that's a good point. I'm sure that does happen more often than we talk about.
Oh yeah,
Because if they're in a small enough community, and depending, I'm sure we can define many communities that isolate in that way and keep you from the main, you know,
exactly.
information or the main social media, whether it be the news, whether it be comic
Mhm.
books, everyday books, whatever the type of stuff. Yeah, so
Ex-
I can see that, and I can see that happening on both sides, not
Yeah.
just, not just the females. But,
Hmm.
you
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
so,
Exactly. So that was one.
mm,
So yeah, it
yeah,
was interesting.
yeah.
So
What about? Do you have any funny stories to share?
funny stories? Mm-mm.
No, no.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
So you deal with most of your situations are not funny by any means.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, I don't know what would be considered funny. I mean, people will say, I will only talk about sex with you. I feel open, I mean, that
But,
makes me feel good. We can laugh about it, and they'll say, well, you would think I'll feel comfortable talking to my husband, but I don't,
but,
you know.
but,
But so maybe like different comments like that I find, funny and
yeah,
it's humorous and we're laughing, but I understand.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you understand why they can be open with you, but have the
Yeah,
well, of course it's easier to be open with you because you don't share the memory with them.
exactly. But
But
when people come to for sex therapy, they've had a lot of bad experiences with other therapists that are
really,
not, yeah, that don't specialize
oh,
in sex therapy. And they're
oh,
seeking
okay,
help, and so they done gone to different therapists, and they've had bad experiences. And so
and
I can understand the breath of fresh air.
yeah, can you do me a huge favor in the audience too and talk about that? Because
Yes.
I know from professional experience that is a common struggle that
Yeah.
people in the field deal with. That they'll
Mm-hmm.
see somebody that's not a specialist, and then
Mm-hmm.
they finally come to a specialist, and they hit two different things, and
Yeah.
it confuses them. And then
Mm-hmm.
we have to do a little bit harder of a job to make sure to reassure them, yes, we are the specialist.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that for people so they know you want to pick the right person?
Yeah. So I think what is happening is, people will seek out help from maybe a marriage and family therapist and just assume, oh, they specialize in marriage and family therapy and couples. So they'll be able to talk about sex and these issues. And so they go in there, they tell their life story, they talk about communication issues and stuff like that. And so they're getting the support. But then when it gets to the intimacy part, they feel judged. You know, I've heard that, some of these therapists kind of, are judging them for religious reasons, and stuff like that, and telling them, well, that do you think maybe that's why you're having this issue because of a sexual act that they may enjoy?
Mhm.
And it's like, no,
Right.
and so when they come to you, they are hesitant because they've had bad experience with just trying to open up about their sexual experiences and what they want to work on. And so they're assuming that we're going to judge them too, or we're going to look at them a certain way, or look at them as being weird because they like certain sexual behaviors and different things like that. And so it's hard to, so sometimes we have to start off by just, again, cultivating that therapeutic relationship where they can trust you, you
Mhm.
know. So
Right.
that can be difficult, So yeah, it's just being judged. Some therapists telling them that's not normal.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's not normal. That's
Mhm.
probably why y'all have some issues in your relationship. They'll start attributing it to intimacy things that they've already revealed in the session. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you
Yeah,
know.
and that's too bad that that continues to go on out there, you know.
Mhm.
But
And yeah, that's the
go
first thing they'll say is, "I had a bad experience." So I'm
ahead.
kinda hesitant to
Mhm.
really go into detail about sex because sometimes I've had a lot of clients come to me and they don't talk about sex. I have to ask.
Right.
And then they say, "Okay, well, yeah, this is an issue, but I don't think I'm ready to talk about that right now." And then they'll go into their bad experience and stuff like that. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Right.
it's common.
So, yes, and I'm gonna reiterate what Adrian said, which is you want to see somebody that's, but if you have such issues in the bedroom, intimacy issues, anything that has to do with sexuality, you want to see someone trained in that area. You know, whether it be a sex therapist, a sex educator,
Mhm.
but you want a professional. You don't want just any licensed therapist
Mhm.
because they don't all get the same training. Sometimes, usually, a licensed therapist will only have one human sexuality class,
Mhm.
whereas a sex therapist has at least 10, if not more. So
Yeah,
it depends on each different license and different education, but
mhm.
you definitely don't want somebody who's only taking one class.
Exactly.
That's not enough.
Exactly. That's why I think the magazine is important too, because it puts it opens the door for people to know these things and kind of educate themselves on the profession.
Yeah.
And there is specialists out there that can help you.
Yes.
Even if it's just about kink, they have therapists that specialize in kink.
Yes.
You know, just
Hmm.
kink,
Right.
and you can seek out help that way.
Right.
So
Right. Thank you. That was a nice plug to KNT.
Yes. That's why it's important.
Yeah, thank you. But
Mhm.
and our next podcast, as you can see, is in 2 weeks, October 25th. And that is a Q&A session, which means that the audience has sent in questions that they want answered. So all you have to do is send it to feedback at kissandtellmagazine.com. I'll put it up real quick. And we'll answer the question live in 2 weeks. You get free answers. I won't charge you.
Yes.
So thank you, Adrian, for being here tonight. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
And I am a slow typer. I'm kidding it. Okay. No. So feedback at kissandtellmagazine.com. If you want to send questions that you want answered live on our next podcast in 2 weeks, please do so. It will be anonymous. I will not reveal your name. So please send it in. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.